Right, so get this. We're diving into the world of cryptocurrency today, but not in a place you might expect. We're heading to Uganda.
Uganda.
Yeah, Uganda. You sent us this article from New Vision. It's called Golft Mole's Crypto Law as Transactions Hit Shh 2.5 Trillion.
Okay.
And honestly, it kind of blew my mind. Over 700 million US dollars in crypto transactions in Uganda. Like, there's a story here we got to unpack.
It definitely raises some eyebrows, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
Uganda isn't exactly known as like a Silicon Valley of Africa, so
No.
this surge in crypto activity is pretty fascinating.
Right, and the article mentions that the Ugandan government is actually thinking about new laws to, like, regulate all this crypto stuff. So they're definitely taking it seriously. But before we get all into the legal stuff, like, what's the average Ugandan's experience with crypto even like?
Well, their article quotes the state minister for planning, Amos Lugalubi,
Okay.
and he basically said that most Ugandans find cryptocurrency as confusing as rocket science,
Wow.
which honestly is a sentiment we hear a lot globally, to be fair.
Yeah.
But, that doesn't mean they're not using it.
Hold on, so you're saying there's a ton of crypto changing hands, but most people don't even get it.
Yeah.
That seems kind of, I don't know, risky.
It definitely highlights the need for some clear guidelines and education, for sure.
Yeah.
And this isn't just a Ugandan problem, by the way. Minister Lugalubi actually brought up crypto regulations at a recent international meeting. So this is on a lot of governments' minds.
Okay, so Uganda's not alone in this whole crypto scramble, which makes sense. But, like, what are other countries actually doing about it? Are they all jumping on board?
It's a real mixed bag, actually. The article mentions some pretty interesting examples.
Okay.
You've got El Salvador and the Central African Republic. They've gone all in, making Bitcoin legal tender.
Wow.
Then you have places like Saudi Arabia that have completely banned it.
So, like, total opposite ends of the spectrum. Okay, so before we, like, zoom out to the whole world,
Right.
let's stick with Uganda for a minute.
Okay.
The article talks about the late Bank of Uganda governor, Professor Tumizime Mutabile.
Yes.
And it sounds like he wasn't exactly a fan of all this crypto stuff.
Yeah, he was definitely on the cautious side. Professor Mutebile was particularly worried about the potential for misuse, like, money laundering, financing crime.
Right.
Since crypto transactions can be pretty anonymous, it makes it pretty attractive to people who are, operating outside the law.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And if I'm remembering the article correctly, he was also worried about everyday Ugandans getting caught up in something they don't fully understand.
Yeah, he was concerned about people losing their savings if what he called the crypto bubble were to burst.
Oh, right.
This was a few years ago, and the crypto landscape has definitely shifted since then, but his warnings about the inherent risks are still valid today.
Okay, so on one hand, the government's admitting they can't ignore crypto, but then you've got experts like Professor Mutebile urging caution.
Right.
Where does that leave the average Ugandan trying to make sense of all this?
Well, it's a tough spot to be in, for sure.
Yeah.
But the article does offer another perspective. It talks about President Museveni's stance.
Oh, interesting. What was President Museveni's take on all of this?
Well, he apparently attended a blockchain conference back in 2019, and his perspective was actually surprisingly different from the late professor's.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. So, was he pro-crypto?
He actually encouraged a more open-minded approach, I'd say. The article even quotes him saying, "I think we should study these new elements and we see how we can remove any risks and take advantage of benefits."
Okay, so he's not just dismissing it outright.
No.
He's saying let's really investigate it first.
Exactly. He recognized that technology is constantly evolving and it's crucial to understand these innovations before making any hasty decisions.
That's a pretty forward-thinking perspective, especially considering this was back in 2019. So we've got this really interesting mix of opinions from some pretty high-up people in Uganda.
Yeah.
But before we go any further, I think we got to step back and talk about what cryptocurrency even is. This article defines it as a digital currency secured by cryptography that operates on decentralized networks using blockchain technology. And to be honest, I need a little help understanding all of that.
Of course, of course. Think of it this way, like instead of a central bank controlling the currency, imagine a digital ledger that's spread across a huge network of computers. That's the blockchain.
Okay,
It tracks every single transaction, making it super secure and transparent.
gotcha.
And then cryptography adds another layer of security by using these complex algorithms to encrypt those transactions.
Okay, so it's like a super secure digital way to handle money
Yeah,
without needing a bank or a government to manage it.
exactly. And Bitcoin, which was created back in 2009 by the still anonymous Satoshi Nakamoto, is the most famous example. It's
Hmm.
like the OG cryptocurrency that paved the way for all the other ones out there.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. But wouldn't that make it, like, even harder to regulate if it's designed to operate outside of traditional systems? How can governments even begin to control it?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's the one that Uganda is wrestling with right now. It
Mhm.
really is like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. But that's exactly why they're mulling over these new laws, right? They're trying to figure out how to encourage innovation while also protecting people from potential harm.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what we've gathered so far is that Uganda has this, like, unique situation going on. Huge growth in crypto activity in a country where most people don't even really get it.
Right.
You've got experts warning about risks, and the president seems kind of optimistic, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
What does it all mean for the average person in Uganda? How is this actually affecting their lives?
That's a fantastic question, and it's the one we need to dig into next because at the end of the day, this isn't just about like abstract concepts like blockchain and cryptography.
Yeah.
It's about real people and how this tech could potentially transform their lives for better or worse.
Okay, so we just laid the groundwork, exploring that unexpected rise in crypto activity in Uganda and the different reactions it's caused.
Yeah,
Now, I think we need to get into the, like, heart of the matter here.
sure.
What does all of this actually mean for the people of Uganda?
That's where things get really interesting. We've talked about the risks, the government's take on it,
Right.
but there's a whole other side to this story.
Mm-hmm.
The potential benefits that crypto could actually bring to Ugandans.
Right, I'm listening. What kind of benefits are we talking about here?
Well, one of the biggest arguments for crypto, especially when we talk about developing countries,
Right.
is financial inclusion.
Okay.
Think about it. Millions of people in Uganda don't even have access to traditional banking.
Mm.
Cryptocurrency, with its decentralized nature, it could actually offer them a way to participate in the global economy.
So instead of relying on banks, they can basically control their own money through crypto. That sounds, I don't know, pretty empowering, especially in places where those traditional financial institutions are just, like, limited.
Absolutely.
But are Ugandans actually using it that way?
That's a good question. While this article doesn't give us any specific anecdotes,
Yeah.
the potential is definitely there. Imagine, like, a small business owner in a rural village. They could receive payments from customers anywhere in the world without needing a bank account.
Whoa, that's huge. Like, suddenly borders don't matter as much when you're doing business?
Exactly.
What other benefits are there?
Another major one is faster and cheaper cross-border transactions.
Okay.
Sending money internationally, especially to or from a country like Uganda, it can be incredibly slow and expensive using traditional methods.
Yeah, it can be a real pain.
Crypto could streamline that whole process big time.
So, for example, like a Ugandan worker sending money back home to their family,
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't lose a ton of their earnings to fees.
Right, and that could have a huge impact.
Yeah, totally.
It could really boost those remittances, make a real difference for families and communities.
Mm.
And beyond just like individual transactions, it could also make it easier for Ugandan businesses to trade internationally,
Mhm.
opening up those new markets and opportunities.
Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing the potential upside here.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about those risks we were talking about earlier.
Oh, for sure.
Like money laundering, potential for scams, people losing their savings.
Right.
How do we balance those concerns with these potential benefits?
It's a tough one. It's a delicate balance, and there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
Every country's got its own, like, unique challenges and circumstances. What works in El Salvador might not work in Uganda.
Right.
They need to figure out their own path, and I think that's where regulations come in.
But how do you regulate something that's literally designed to be decentralized?
Yeah.
Like, how do you control something that operates outside of traditional systems?
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going to take some collaboration, not just within Uganda, but on a global scale. Cryptocurrency doesn't care about borders, right?
Yeah.
So international cooperation is going to be key here to develop effective regulations.
So are they just kind of like in wait and see mode right now, just trying to figure out how to approach all of this?
Pretty much. And that's where, President Museveni's call to study all of this comes in.
Okay.
They're gathering info, analyzing what other countries are doing, and trying to come up with a regulatory framework that makes sense for Uganda.
It sounds like Minister Lugalubi's participation in that international meeting,
Ah.
like that was a big step in that process, right? He was probably, like, trying to figure out what other countries have already learned.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's all about finding that balance, right? Between fostering innovation, but also protecting people.
Yeah.
And this isn't just about technology at the end of the day. It's
Well,
about people, their lives, their livelihoods, their futures.
you've hit on something really important there. We talked a lot about the technical side of crypto, but this whole situation, it really brings up some big questions about the future of finance.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
is this what the world's going to look like in 10, 20 years?
Right.
Will we all be using Bitcoin to buy our groceries?
Who knows? No one has a crystal ball, right?
Right.
But what we can say is that crypto is definitely making us rethink things like our relationship with money, the whole financial system.
Yeah, it's like this giant experiment playing out in real time.
Absolutely.
And we're all kind of a part of it, whether we realize it or not.
Right.
And Uganda, in its own way, is really at the forefront of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Their decisions, their successes, and even their failures, they're all going to be super valuable for the rest of the world.
For sure.
So I think as we head into the final part of our deep dive here, the big question is, what does the future hold for crypto in Uganda? And what does that mean for the global financial system? Will it be a force for good, or will the risks be too much to handle?
I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Well, stay with us, because that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of cryptocurrency in Uganda. We've covered a lot of ground, from that surprising crypto boom to the potential upsides and downsides, and of course the Ugandan government's reaction, which is still kind of up in the air.
Yeah, they're definitely walking a tightrope right now.
They are. But I keep thinking back to that point about most Ugandans viewing crypto as rocket science.
Right.
Can this technology really succeed if most people don't understand it?
It's a valid question, and it really highlights how crucial education and accessibility are. It's not enough for just a handful of people to get it and benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
If crypto is going to really change a country's economy, there needs to be widespread understanding.
Okay, so what does that look like, practically speaking? How do you bridge that knowledge gap?
Well, I think it's going to take a multi-pronged approach. Governments, schools, even private companies all need to play a part. Imagine having workshops and training programs that are easy to access and tailored to different groups of people.
Yeah.
And think about mobile-friendly apps that explain these complex concepts in simple terms.
Right, make it easy to understand.
Exactly.
But even if we solve the education problem, there's still the issue of risk, right?
Absolutely.
How do you protect people from scams, from the market going up and down, and from potentially losing their money?
Regulation is definitely part of the answer, but it's not a magic solution.
Right, we talked about that.
And as we discussed, trying to regulate something that's designed to be decentralized, that's a tough nut to crack.
It is.
It's going to require some really creative thinking, maybe even looking beyond those traditional ways of regulating things.
Like what? Are there any examples from other countries that Uganda could learn from?
Well, some countries are trying out these things called sandboxes.
Sandboxes.
Yeah, it's basically a controlled environment where crypto companies can operate and try new things, but under close supervision. It lets regulators observe the technology in action,
Okay.
see where the risks might be, and then adjust the rules as needed.
So it's kind of like a learn-by-doing approach to regulation.
Yeah, exactly.
But even with the best regulations, there's always the human factor to consider.
Right, absolutely.
Like greed, fear, just not understanding things can lead people to make bad decisions.
That's true no matter what the rules are.
Exactly.
So personal responsibility is still huge.
Yeah.
People need to do their research, understand the risks, and not just jump in blindly.
It's like that old saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right. And it's not just about avoiding those scams. It's about understanding what you're getting into before you invest any money.
Mm-hmm.
Crypto can be a really powerful tool, but you got to use it carefully.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep picturing Uganda at a crossroads, like we were saying before.
Yeah.
One path leads toward really embracing crypto's potential, encouraging innovation, and helping more people access financial services. But the other path, that's full of uncertainty, risks, and who knows what could happen.
And the path they end up taking, it all comes down to a lot of different factors.
Yeah.
The government's policies, how well they educate people about it, what happens with technology, and probably most importantly, the choices that individual Ugandans make.
It's a good reminder that technology doesn't just exist on its own.
No, it doesn't.
It's shaped by the people who use it,
Yeah.
the decisions they make, and what they value.
Mm-hmm.
So The future of crypto in Uganda and really everywhere else, it's up to us.
It really is, and that's what makes this whole conversation so fascinating, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's not just about the tech itself, it's about people, their hopes, their struggles, and how they shape the future they want to see.
Well said. This has been a really eye-opening deep dive, and I gotta say, I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Me too.
What started as a simple news story about crypto in Uganda turned into this much bigger conversation about the future of money and how we deal with these new technologies.
Absolutely, and that's what we love to do, right?
We do.
Start with a question and see where it leads us.
So to our listener, we'll leave you with this. Keep asking those questions, keep learning, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. The world of finance is changing fast, and the more we know, the better equipped we'll be to navigate it.
Well said. And who knows, maybe Uganda will end up being a leader in all of this. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.